Hi everyone. Today I am creating the video that I wish I had had 25 years ago when I wanted to change in so many areas of my life and I didn't know how to change. So we will be talking about 5 steps in the transformation process. This is Barb Ravling and this is week 4 of my 4-week series on how to renew your mind so you will actually change. Okay, so the first step, if you want to be transformed, is to choose a project. So we're going to be intentional. Choose one area of your life that you'd like to see transformation and start going to God for help with it. So that might be a habit you want to break, a habit you want to develop, or it could be a negative emotion you want to break free from. If it's a negative emotion, choose a portion of that emotion that's doable. So let's say you struggle with anxiety and maybe there's 4 or 5 areas in your life that you really worry about. So just choose one of those areas, not all of them, just choose one. Same thing with anger. Choose one relationship if you struggle with anger. So if you choose that one area, you want to choose an area where you will be renewing your mind 2 or 3 times a day. Okay. So you don't want to choose an area that you hardly ever experience. So like if you only worry once a week, you don't want to choose that area. So choose one area, you have your project, and then we're going to start going to God for help with it. So the second step is to renew your mind consistently. Okay, 2 to 4 times a day. And this is why renewing is important. I want to take you back to my experience with adult braces. As an older person, I had to get braces. And the reason I had to get braces is because I had TMJ. So I had all this pain in my jaw and they couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. And finally, the dentist said, let's try braces. There's only a 30% chance it's going to work, but we'll give it a try and see what happens. Well, it worked. Within 2 weeks of putting the braces on my teeth, my pain was gone. And I don't know how many years that's been, a long time, and it hasn't come back since. But here's the thing. I couldn't just go into the dentist, put the braces on one day, and then say, it's not convenient for me to have them on the next day. So could we take them off today and then put them back on when I'm back from my trip? No, the dentist wouldn't have allowed that, right? The dentist said, no, you have to have these braces on for a couple of years. So 2 years with braces and then a year maybe with retainers. Okay, why did I need those braces? Because my teeth and my jaw, it had to be trained. It had to be trained so that it was working right, so I wouldn't experience that pain. And it's the same way with the renewing of the mind. We have thoughts that are making us more anxious than we need to be, thoughts that are making us more angry, thoughts that are creating huge desires to do those habits we want to break, or thoughts that are keeping us from doing the habits we want to develop. And so, what we need to do is we need to train our mind. We need to train all those thoughts in our mind, get them all lined up, just like the orthodontist did with my teeth, so that they're creating healthy desires and healthy emotions. And so, in order to do that, we need to renew our mind throughout the day. It's not enough to just renew your mind once in the morning or once a week. In fact, I don't really have real hopes for you changing if you're only going to renew once a day. I think you have to renew throughout the day to see real growth. So that's the second step to transformation, is to renew your mind. Now, if you're working on an emotions project, what I normally do is I just renew my mind whenever the emotion comes up. And a lot of times it's our emotions that are fueling things like people pleasing and perfectionism. So they're fueling the habit. So if you go back to the core of it, the emotion itself, sometimes you'll see change a little more quickly if you start with the emotion. Okay, the third thing we need to do is renew our minds specifically for whatever project we're working on. And I already mentioned that in week 1, but the reason I mention it again is because this is one of the most common comments I get. I ask people if they've been renewing their mind. They say, I haven't been changing. So the first thing I ask is, have you been renewing your mind? And usually the answer is no, but sometimes the answer is yes. And I ask what they've been doing, and people will say, well, I got this new Bible study. It's really great. I'm going to the church Bible study, or have this little devotional app. And here's the thing, all those things will renew our minds. If we end up with changed minds by the end of it, it's going to renew our minds, but they won't help us with our project. So we need to renew our minds specifically for that project. In videos 2 and 3, I talked about how to do that. So one of the key things right at the beginning is to choose some scripture verses, some Bible verses for your project. And those are the ones you're going to meditate on, pray through, all the things we talked about in videos 2 and 3. Okay, the fourth thing we need to do is make any practical changes we need to make. So our thoughts, they fuel our emotions and desires, and they create actions, right? So if I'm thinking the world's going to end, I'm going to be anxious, right? And then I might do my coping techniques, whatever I do when I'm anxious. But the other thing is, what if I'm on the news all the time? What if I'm watching the news 2 hours a day? Well, that action is going to create the anxiety. So a practical change I would need to make would be stop watching the news so much. Or with eating, let's say I struggle with emotional eating and all the foods I typically turn to for emotional eating, they're in my house, easily available. That's going to make me want to eat. So that would be a practical change to make. Or let's say I'm working on procrastination. I might need to learn some systems, some tools to do the work that I need to do. So work on making practical changes. What you could do is just Google to find out other people who struggle with the same area you struggle with, see if they have any ideas. Always make sure whatever you choose that something God would approve of and think it's okay. Like there's nothing against it in the Bible, but look for practical things you can do to help with your project. Okay, step 5, the last step is trust in God and trust in the process. So remember that transformation is a partnership, okay? God is the one who changes us, but we're the ones who renew our minds, and God's the one who helps us renew our minds. He's the one that helps us see life from a biblical perspective. So we have to trust that He's going to change us, but we don't have any control over when He changes us. So remember back with my braces, I had to go to all that work to put on the braces, knowing that the dentist said there's only about a 30% chance it will make a difference. Now, with the renewing of the mind, there's really a 100% chance because the Bible gives us that promise. We're transformed by the renewing of the mind, but we don't know how long it will take. And just from past experience, 25 years renewing my mind, the more often you renew in that particular area, the faster you will change. So your best bet for changing faster is to renew your mind. Now, how long can you expect it to change? When I worked on anger, it took me about 2 months to really start feeling like I was living in victory. But when I worked on people pleasing, it probably took me 5 to 7 years. But I did not renew my mind as often with that. So I really was kind of renewing, some, but definitely not enough to change faster. With eating, it took a lot of years because it took me several years before I can make myself renew consistently. So it's interesting because some things will change in like 2 sessions. All we need is a mindset adjustment. But a lot of things, if we've been doing those things for years, or if our family of origin struggles with that, if there's any generational sins, if the culture is doing the same thing or struggling with the same things, chances are it's going to be harder to change because we're so wrapped up with them. Okay, so those are 5 things. Those are the 5 steps of transformation. Okay, let's talk about what to expect in the transformation process. When I first started Renew My Mind, it was so life changing. I was so excited. It brought me so close to God and gave me peace and joy. I thought, this is the answer to all the struggles in my life. 2 months for anger. I'm going to do 2 months for emotional eating, 2 months for procrastination, 2 months for everything in my life. Okay, well, it wasn't like that. It's been 25 years. I'm far from perfect, right? So it didn't only take 2 months. So here's what you need to expect. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard work. It's not the easy answer. I've said in videos 2 and 3 that renewing only has to take 5 or 10 minutes. And that's true. And especially with habits, it shouldn't take that long, maybe 5 minutes. But for emotions, sometimes, like the other night, I got up in the middle of the night to renew my mind about some things I was anxious about. I truth journaled 2 different times and it took 45 minutes. But if I had been laying in bed, I wouldn't have been able to get to sleep because of the anxiety. So 45 minutes, I was feeling peace and joy again. My worry was gone. I went right back to sleep. Other times I've renewed my mind and there's been tears involved. I had to give up things. I have had to put God first. And I had to remember what the Bible said and say, am I really going to believe this? Am I really going to live this way? That involves submission. It involves repentance. It involves drawing near to God, soaking in His love. So the renewing of the mind, okay, expect hard work, but also expect that if you are diligent in it, this is really going to draw you closer to God. Have you ever had a talk with either a friend or maybe even somebody you met in the airplane and a really intimate, close talk? You feel closer to each other after that, right? Well, it's the same way in working with the renewing of the mind. When we work together with God, we get closer to Him. In fact, that was probably the biggest advantage of all the advantages to renewing my mind when I started this habit is how close it made me to God and continuously close, really for 25 years. And I do have a podcast episode on that, 14 Ways to Get Closer to God. So in that one, I describe some of the things that kept me from feeling close to God, but overall, close to God. Okay, and the third thing to remember is growth is not an upwards diagonal line. So it's not going to be like always going up. Each day you're better than the day before. You're going to have days when you don't feel like renewing your mind. You're going to have days when you feel like a total failure, when you go back to your habits full force. You think, I'm never going to change. That is all part of the process. Failure is part of the process. But what you do is you renew your mind about those failures too. You renew your mind about the defeated thoughts, about the self-condemning thoughts, the I'll never change thoughts. And that's another way to start seeing life from God's perspective, to start seeing transformation from God's perspective. So I hope that you will choose a project. I hope that you will persevere. It sometimes helps to get a friend to do this with. You could ask a friend, ask a family member, start a little group. When I wrote the Renewing the Mind project, when I first published that, I taught a group for that book at our church. And it was just so fun to see the different projects that people did and how they grew during the time we were together. So if you can, try to get somebody to do this with. But this is something that you can do with God. You don't need a lot of tools. You don't need a lot of extras. You just need to take time and keep meeting with Him. And remember that change is a process. It doesn't happen instantly. Everybody goes through the same struggles, but we also all get the same delights and advantages if we persevere. And I'm praying that you will persevere. If you have any other questions on renewing the mind, either email me or put them in the comments and I'll try to do some more videos on those if there are any questions.